Welcome to Staying Connected, a podcast where I talk to other people about their stories with VEDS or Vascular Ehlers-Danlos Syndrome. This is your host, Katie, and before we get into the show, I want to remind you that the views, information, and opinions in this podcast are those of the individuals involved, and the information presented does not constitute medical or other professional advice or services. Any opinions that I express in this podcast are my own and not of my employer. Welcome back to another episode of Staying Connected. Today, we're going to talk to Maria Vowles and Mandy Carpenter, the founders of Adventures in Love for Andie, who lost their daughter Andie to VEDS. In this interview, we will talk about Andie's diagnosis of Vascular Ehlers-Danlos Syndrome, what happened to her, and what Maria and Mandy have done with Adventures in Love for Andie to raise awareness and support for VEDS. Please be advised that in this interview, we do go into detail about what happened to Andie that caused her death, which can be difficult to hear, and if you have VEDS, or love somebody with it, potentially triggering. Stick around at the end of the show for some info about community events coming up. And if you want to support this show, consider joining my Patreon. You can join the Patreon at the link in the episode show notes, and you can also support the show by sharing this podcast with people you know, which will help us raise awareness of VEDS together. Thank you so much for your support, and a huge thanks to my current patrons who have already been supporting the show. My top tier patrons are listed in the episode show notes. Hey, Maria and Mandy, I'm so glad to have you here to talk about Andie's story. I'm really grateful that you're coming on to share this story. I think a lot of people in our community have really become very connected with her, and I'm really just grateful for you being here. So why don't we go ahead and have you introduce yourselves. I'm going to go ahead and start with Maria.
So I'm Maria Vowles. I'm Andie's mom, and Mandy and I started an organization called Adventures in Love for Andie, and we try to raise awareness for VEDS, and we raise money that we donate either to bigger VEDS organizations, or we started a little VEDS scholarship for higher education that people can apply to.
Wonderful. Yeah, I'm looking forward to talking about that more in the interview too, later on in the interview. Mandy, do you want to introduce yourself too?
I'm Mandy Carpenter. I am Andie's stepmom, bonus mom. And I don't know what else to say.
I mean, I think you both are like out and about in our community, and hopefully people are making those connections with who you are. Thank you for being in here today and talking about her story. I want to start with, so Andie obviously is no longer with us today. And before we jump into her story and her diagnosis and everything, I would love it if each of you could just share like a little bit about Andie.
Andie, honestly, she was, especially when she was younger, she was just this like delicate little porcelain doll. Like she hated being called delicate, like later on in life. But like she was just, I just remember her, like she maybe threw like 2 temper tantrums like ever. Like she just, I think it would like hurt her to like throw a temper tantrum. So she was such an easygoing child, like just really agreeable and super sweet. And, as she got older, she always just had this like old soul sense. Like she was just wise beyond her years. And I just remember talking to her, and, the stuff that she was aware of just wasn't typical for someone her age, just to be so aware of just what was going on.
Yeah.
And Andie just always found so much humor in everything. Like she was just always laughing. She loved to laugh, and she
had the best
laugh. Yeah. She was a lot of fun to be around.
I was gonna say something similar just about her, her overall demeanor. She was just a good kid. Like we didn't have any issues with her school-wise. We started going to, parent-teacher conferences, and really there wasn't really even a need to go to them because there was nothing like negative ever reported on it. She always got good grades. Her behavior was always good. Everybody always spoke highly of her. Just I think one thing that always sticks out about her is her, sense of family. Like she just loved her family, all of them. She had a big family. We always told her, like, you're very blessed to have such a big family that loves you so much. And, the thing that I miss the most is like her interaction with her siblings and that relationship that they had such a special bond, just with, I don't know, just random things like Snapchat. They used to sit on the couch and just laugh for hours playing with different Snapchat filters, and it's hysterical. And I'm really grateful to have like the pictures and the videos that she took from that as memories. But I think that's like one of the things that stands out the most is her love of family. She just loved to be around all of us.
I love that. Thank you so much for sharing a little bit about that, and about her. And I know that this interview, there's, for listeners there's probably some tough stuff that we're going to talk about in this interview. So I just wanted them to have like a picture of her in their minds before we get into it. So how was she diagnosed with VEDS, and what was her life like kind of before this diagnosis as a baby?
As a baby, she, I noticed that when she was crawling, she's getting bruises all over cushions of her legs, and it seemed really excessive. And I had gotten her evaluated, and they wanted to test her for leukemia, and she tested negative for that. And then they tested her for all kinds of bleeding disorders, and they thought she had like missing blood clotting protein. It wasn't von Willebrand's. I'm not really sure which one they thought it might be, but they said that she could outgrow it. And just, we never really had our questions answered. And honestly, Andie lived a really normal life, because none of it, we knew that she was really delicate and she bruised really easily, but we didn't know what a lot of parents know when their kids are diagnosed, things to be careful of, stay away from. Obviously we didn't know any of that. So Andie played contact sports. She played soccer when she was little. She hated soccer. Petrified of the ball.
She was always ducking.
Running the other way.
Sad because she really loved to play, and you could see that she was starting to get a hang of the sport and how to do it, but she just kept getting injured from the ball. And so she kept ducking and she couldn't really play it effectively. So yeah, she did end up giving it up.
How old was she when she gave up soccer?
Oh, what was it? I want to say she was it was like 5th or 6th grade, I think.
Yeah, I feel like she was like 8 or 9 when she gave that up.
She did 1 year of travel soccer for summer rec, and then that was the last year.
So Mandy, what do you remember about her like symptoms and things before her diagnosis, or what led to that?
So definitely the main thing that we noticed was the easily getting bruised and injured. Like we always did like a girls party is what I called it, like a cousin party before school starts every year. So it was just her and her cousins, and they were in the backyard playing, and she was just galloping like a horse in the backyard, and her knee just blew up. Just like gigantic bruise, not even just a bruise, but just like a bubble basically on her knee. And all she was doing was galloping. She didn't fall, she didn't hit it, she didn't do anything. And they said that she burst her bursa sac on her knee. You know, just simple things like that, just banging her arm on something, you know, just anything small that nobody else would even notice, she'd have a gigantic bruise or some sort of injury from. You know, when she was being enrolled for school, we had to make sure we put on the form that she bruises easily so that they didn't mistake, you know, any bruises that she has as child abuse. You know, I can't imagine other families who don't know that their kids have this condition and are getting accused of child abuse because they get these unexplainable bruises and, you know, get reported for it and what they have to go through. You know, another reason to spread awareness for it.
Yeah.
You know, so I think as far as like diagnosis goes, I remember I was Googling something for one of my other daughters, and happened to come across this article online, and I think it's one from Kathy Bowen that she did for her son, because I remember his face. I believe I remember his picture being on there, and it just went through like what it is and what the different symptoms of it is. And as I was reading through it, it was just kind of like a checkbox for Andie. It was like, check, check, check. She had pretty much everything. And then at the very, very end of the article, it mentioned sleeping with your eyes partially open. And she always does that. She had always slept with her eyes partially open. So it just like, I'm like, oh my gosh, I think I found it. I think this is what it is. I remember telling Maria, I'm like, I think I got it. Read this. This sounds just like her.
How old was she at that time?
Oh, that was like 14, I think.
Yeah, because I think it's just, well, I think she was 15 when she was diagnosed. Yeah. And that was in like November. So it was right before she turned 16. So she was probably 15.
Yeah. So I called the doctor. I'm like, I want to get her tested for this. And they brought her in and did a bunch of testing, like checked out her feet to see if she had flat feet. They had her hold her hand down on the desk and then like pulled her finger back, which of course she could pull hers back like almost to her wrist. And then pulled like the skin out on her neck to see how far it could be pulled out for like stretchy skin. She passed all those tests, so he referred her to a geneticist to get tested for it.
And then the test came back.
Yep, it came back, and we all went into the office, talked to the geneticist, and that was when he confirmed it was the vascular form. And I don't know, that we didn't really get too much information. I remember he handed us a printout that explained what VEDS was, but that's all we left with. And then he mentioned that she would have to get like a sonogram of her heart every year. So like an annual checkup.
And his demeanor was very cavalier. Oh, it's Ehlers-Danlos. Yeah, it's the more severe type, but really, just don't go scuba diving. You know, you can still play contact sports. Don't worry about getting a medical ID bracelet. And for somebody who is speaking that, like, just not a big deal kind of mannerism, I mean, I have been reading about it, you know, since Mandy had sent me the information on it, and it sounded so serious. And then when this professional, who's a geneticist who specializes in genetic diseases, is like telling me and us this, I just thought I must be overreacting with all the stuff I'm reading. you know.
Yeah, we said it a couple of times that we thought that she had like a mild form of it, which, that doesn't, I don't think that really exists. I don't think there is a mild form. Everybody's different on what actually happens to their particular body, but there's no like mild
Right.
form of it. But that's what we thought. We're like, oh, she got lucky because she hasn't had any of these things happen to her.
So how did that change? Like, she's 15, you get this diagnosis, and now you have like this conflicting information from the internet and this geneticist. And, you like, how did that change for you and for Andie? Like, what was her experience in this too, as much as as parents?
Well, I kind of felt like when she was diagnosed, she really took it to heart what the geneticist was saying. And she also just didn't think that, anything was like too terribly wrong with her. I remember she continued playing basketball, but then she got injured. She had torn her ACL and had to get knee surgery. So that put the kibosh on basketball, but she would still ski and, running. She did to the best of her ability. Once the surgery healed, she didn't, run for the school anymore, but, she would still run and stuff. But I think later on, like once she got to college, things kind of shifted. And especially after she got into a car accident, it really it started to hit home that what she had was really severe. And I think she started to experience a lot of anxiety about that.
Yeah. Did she have did she have like a severe outcome from that car accident?
Some bruising, mostly where the seatbelt was primarily. She, like the anxiety side for sure. She was looking for somebody up there that she could talk to about it. I remember her calling me one time. She was driving and she was going around a bend and her heart started like racing, like she had to pull over. And she thought that, it was like kind of a form of PTSD from the accident because she was making a turn when the accident happened. So that was really the main thing that came out of the accident.
And what was it like for you as parents dealing with this diagnosis?
The unknown. I mean, we didn't know. I mean, it was kind of a relief to know finally what it was, but unfortunately with the diagnosis that we got, it wasn't too much of a relief because you didn't know anything about it. You didn't know what to do. You still had the anxiety that came along with, every ache and pain that she had, not knowing if it's a severe ache or pain. If she's saying she's feeling pain in her abdomen, is it just like gas or something like that? Or is it something more severe that we need to take her in to get checked out for? And I see that a lot in, the community that's out there now. Like, I'm feeling this pain. I feel it in my back. What should I do? Should I go get checked out? Because nobody wants to waste their time or the doctor's times, but they also don't want to make the wrong decision and not go in and be seen for something that could be life altering.
Yeah, I can attest to that as a person with VEDS. Like, that's a very scary it's a very scary situation when you are not sure if it's something, and then you feel like, maybe it's not something and I'm overreacting, but man, if it is something, like, you could die. And it's like,
right.
You don't want to make the wrong call with that.
And then when you go in to get, seen, you know what it takes to know to rule out something serious out, which, if it is just, a gas pain or something like that, it's an overreaction, but that's what it takes to know if that's truly what it is or not. And so it requires medical staff to listen to what you need for your body. And that's hard sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely. Maria, what was it like for you as a parent dealing with this diagnosis?
I was at a loss. I didn't know what to believe, really. I wanted to be involved, so I joined a bunch of Ehlers-Danlos community, like in, Western New York. I joined the one in Central New York, just trying to get information. I know I would say to Andie, I had randomly found something for Reds for Veds Day right when it must have been one of the first years they had done it or whatnot. And I remember talking to Andie about it and saying we should wear red and post, on social media. And she was kind of embarrassed. At that time she was still in high school and she was just kind of shying away. She didn't really want to talk about it. So I guess it's kind of torn. Like, I didn't know where to go for information. I had found a random study in Michigan, and actually now in hindsight, when I look back, it was the VEDS Collaborative that was getting data for patients. And I signed up for it for Andie and had Andie like put her info in and whatnot. But it just ended there. Like, we never got any more information about anything. It was just like a big unknown.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you were let's go back to this community part, because you were part of these Ehlers-Danlos groups, but you never got connected with the vascular groups, right?
Mm-hmm.
No. Yeah. And really those communities, because there's so many different types of Ehlers-Danlos, they're posting about all these different ailments that they have, like hips dislocating or POTS or dysautonomy, or I don't know, just a bunch of different things, like things just randomly popping out of place for no reason. That even Andie was a part of these, and she's reading them. She's like, I got to leave this group because I'm seeing all this stuff happening to these people, and I don't have any of this. I feel like this doesn't apply to me. And she ended up leaving because she couldn't read about all that stuff every day and thinking this could be me in the future.
Right. So she had, and it was, gosh, I remember later, like way after I met you all, I was going through one of the Ehlers-Danlos groups, just kind of looking for people with vascular EDS kind of lost in that group. And I came across one of her posts.
About tattoos?
It was about pregnancy, I think, or having a kid. And it was like this, it was heartbreaking to read it, knowing that she had passed and that she had, had these, was just curious about, what her life as a young woman might look like if she had decided to have kids one day. And I think, the post was like, it was so early and, it's just still very early, but just asking that question. And I know that you all had gotten kind of like lost in that, or that she had gotten kind of lost in that bigger Ehlers-Danlos group, and that all of the types are so different. Do you want to talk about what happened to Andie?
Yeah, I think it was helpful. I'll start and then Mandy can kind of jump in. Because I think I at least know kind of what happened in Albany a little bit because I went there. And Mandy knows more about what happened the day of the event. So Andie, she was driving home from a trip and she had what we think was a dissection of her iliac, and her legs started swelling and filling with blood. She was driving. She didn't have any cell service because it was in the middle of the Adirondacks. So she finally got some cell service, got people to her, and she, went to the hospital. They said she should be evaluated by Albany Med. So she went to Albany Med. And then when she was there, they just kind of monitored her, and it was like, we thought we found the Holy Grail because they said that they were experts with VEDS. They treated other people with VEDS and, knew all about her condition and whatnot. But they just observed her. And then Andie was really pushing, well, shouldn't you do like some kind of CT or something, see what's going on with the site, So they did, and they found an aneurysm where the dissection had been. I don't remember the exact size off the top of my head, but the doctor came in and was explaining to us this aneurysm could be here for months or, whatever. And, originally they told Andie to come back in a month to be scanned. And when they found this aneurysm, they said, we'll come back in 2 weeks. So me hearing their VEDS experts, me seeing that, they are following up with her, they're going to follow up in 2 weeks. I didn't question that they were discharging her. I thought, well, they can't just hold her here for 2 weeks just to monitor her. I mean, that doesn't seem reasonable. And I know Andie was getting anxious. She's in the middle of her radiological technology program, and she was in an internship, and she was really worried about missing school and everything. And when they said she could go, and her boyfriend was going to drive her back. And I had asked her, I packed my stuff, I'm like, I can go out there with you. And oh, no, you don't need to do that, Mom. You okay? And she's an adult. I can't not gonna, if she said she's okay, I'm not gonna be the pushy whatever and be overbearing. So then maybe Mandy can pick up.
Yeah, so she went back home, and it was Tuesday, I believe, that she was released and went back home. And she had a good day Wednesday. Checked in with her a few times during that day. And remember Wednesday night, I got a message from her, pretty late, picture of her in the car. And I'm like, where are you going? And she had gone to the grocery store to get stuff for dinner with Ian. And then that was kind of the end of the conversation for that night. And I remember the next morning I was on a meeting for work, and Josh, her dad, had come in. He was on the phone and said that Ian was on the phone and said that Andie was unresponsive and her lips were blue, and that an ambulance was coming there. And so I immediately got off my call, and we were just kind of listening on the phone while the ambulance was there, and they were able to, I could hear her in the background, and they brought her out, and we told her about the aneurysm. We told her she needed to be helicoptered to Albany right away, and that, they just needed to get her there. And so they brought her to the hospital that's there in Saranac Lake, and we immediately started making arrangements for our other kids so that we could go out there and be with her. And so I remember shortly after we had left, we were driving there. We stopped to get some gas, and the doctor had called, and he had told us that he had been on the phone with the doctors in Albany Med. And that was the first time we found out that she was actually still in Saranac Lake. I think the one thing that I kind of regret, but I know you can't go back and change things now. You can't think about what you would have done or could have done or should have done. But, I should have called the hospital to make sure they know what needed to be done, and that she needed to get to Albany Med, and that they're aware of her condition, and that she needed to get there. But we didn't know what was happening at that time. And, you don't want to call and get in the way of things while they're trying to treat her as well. So we found out she was still there, and the doctor had been on the phone with the other doctors from Albany Med to get instructions on how to care for her. Because, with surgery for people who have VEDS, it's like wet tissue paper when you're trying to sew things back together and stuff. So he got instructions and said that we needed to get her back into surgery right away. And then right then and there, they took her back
So this
to
was at the
surgery.
Saranac Lake Hospital that she was
Yeah.
going to have surgery then.
Yep.
And so she didn't get helicoptered over to
No.
Albany.
No, and we actually ended up getting the files from the hospital after, and it turns out that they had called a volunteer helicopter service who didn't have pilots on Thursdays, and this was a Thursday that this happened. You know, it's the one day they don't have a pilot for their volunteer helicopter service.
So I am assuming that the aneurysm had ruptured
Yes.
at home, the one that had developed from the dissection a couple days prior. So what happened next?
We had called Ian to just talk about what the best route to get there. There's a couple of ways to get to Saranac Lake and kind of take his mind off of things. So we called and we were just talking about which route would be best to take for that time of day, and because it had snowed and stuff. And while we were on the phone with him, the doctor had come back out during that time, and that's when we had found out that she didn't make it. So I was driving on the road when we found out, so I had to pull over right away.
Yeah, and I've seen I know that not long after that, I think when this happened, it was maybe a few months before we started the VEDS movement. And I remember, maybe it was actually like a year later. It seems all smushed together now when I look back in time.
Yeah.
But I remember, celebrating her, what would have been her 21st birthday the next year, right? I think it was a year later.
Yeah, that January.
January.
She was 20 years old and 20 days. So it's 2020.
Yeah, so that was actually the same year.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so I am so sorry that happened to her and for the loss of your daughter, truly. I know that we've all become really close to her, even though we never met her. I feel like I do really struggle with that she got lost in that bigger Ehlers-Danlos group, and that, we do have specific VEDS groups. At the time, the VEDS movement didn't exist, but we do have a Facebook group and stuff. And I really regret that she didn't end up getting pulled into there so that we could have met her and provided support and everything. So then you started Adventures in Love for Andie after this. Do you want to tell me about what inspired you to do that and how you decided to name it?
Well, it actually, a Facebook post that I had made right after just recently popped up in my memories. And we had been doing a lot of reading of Andie's typed work, and she had written like a little memoir, and she said, basically, this diagnosis is not going to change me, and I want to live life to the fullest. And she loved adventuring. Like, adventuring could be like just wandering around, like looking at like something new. Like, it didn't have to be anything like grand and real crazy. But I know she really especially enjoyed being in the Adirondacks and hiking and just seeing the sights and seeing the leaves change in the fall, and she just had such an appreciation for nature, and just she loved being with her family and people that she loved. And I remember, I think I had come to Mandy with just some words. I was like, okay, I want something with adventure and love and Andie in it. And then Mandy just like came up with like the organization's name, like from it. And and we originally just thought it would be like a hashtag that we would use when we were like traveling and adventuring. And our friends and family could use it too. And, just always know that she's with us and she's adventuring with us. And then it just kind of turned into something a little bigger.
So how has that evolved over time? What do you do now at Adventures in Love for Andie?
We do annual events each year. So the very first year, we did a walk, fun run event. And that's really, between the hashtag and that event, that's where the nonprofit kind of kicked off from, with those two things together. Because we raised quite a bit of money during that event that we were able to donate to the VEDS Collaborative and to the scholarships that we had in Andie's name. And we're like, man, we can do a lot more, especially awareness. That was kind of our biggest thing. One was spreading awareness, because there's so many people out there that probably still to this day don't know that they have VEDS. And then also for medical professionals to know what it is. And that, I think, one of the common misconceptions with VEDS, I know Andie faced it a couple of times, was they think of Ehlers-Danlos and they think of, oh, you're just really flexible. That's like the main thing. Oh, I know what Ehlers-Danlos is. I know all about it. And they really didn't, because some of the treatments that they were proposing was not appropriate for her. So, just being able to spread that kind of awareness. And then on top of it, this was before the VEDS movement or anything like that, being able to donate funds to hopefully one day get a treatment, because there is no treatment for it. There's no cure. There's nothing to make it better. There's absolutely nothing other than, you live with whatever happens and hope for the best at that point, so we wanted to do whatever we could to help anybody else out there that was living with that condition. And it just kind of grew from there. And then the VEDS movement came up, and so we're thinking of all these other ways that we can help people. We're like, okay, Andie, she went to college and she thought, oh, there's got to be some sort of scholarship out there for me. I have this condition. I should be able to get some sort of scholarship, and she couldn't find anything for that would apply to her. And so we added that, a scholarship specifically for somebody who has VEDS, to help
I
them.
love that. I've seen that around, and I think it's such a beautiful thing to do in her honor and her memory.
Yeah.
And that's just so exciting that you're doing that. I love it.
We love being able to do it. And, we truly appreciate all the support that we've gotten for, everything that we've done, and in Andie's memory. It just shows how many people out there really loved her and cared for her, because they still to this day support us every year. Whether it's on Reds for VEDS Day, they wear their red and they post their pictures for Andie. The fun run event that we do every year, participating in that, whether they're buying a shirt or not buying a shirt, but just taking their picture of them, going for a walk, just to help spread awareness. And then using the hashtag. I still see people to this day going and taking a vacation and wearing a shirt or using the hashtag. And I still go out there every year and just randomly look for the hashtag to see if there's anything I missed out there. And we did the rocks for a little while. And I remember finding something on Twitter once of a rock that somebody had found in a random place. I had left one, I think I had left it in Utah in the airport, and it made its way to, I want to say it was like Nevada or something like that. And they had posted a picture of it out there. Yeah.
That is so sweet.
I didn't even think of posting information out there on Twitter for it, but that's where it ended up.
Yeah, we we have a big plaque in front of our house, and it tells a little bit about Andie's story, and it has a lot of information about VEDS. And we have a Ring camera, our neighbors have a Ring camera, and after a while, like our neighbor said, I stopped trying to save all these videos for you guys because people, I mean, we have a lot of foot traffic, where we are, and people walking their dogs, they're taking pictures of the sign to look stuff up. It has our website on it and just, general information. So yeah, I think in our own little ways, like in our own little worlds, we're trying to just do whatever we can to raise awareness.
Yeah, and I think that's so important because, I think as a group, like we have an amazing group of individuals that really want everybody to know about this condition. And I think anything that you can do, however little it is, to spread that awareness, I think with all of us doing those things, it's such a bigger thing. It could be a little thing here, a little thing there, a rock in an airport. But together, like all of these things start to work and build and kind of spread, and hopefully eventually it leads to a lot more awareness about this condition and the differences between it and the other forms of Ehlers-Danlos. And truly all the forms of Ehlers-Danlos are different than each other, including VEDS, and how important that is, especially when something major happens. And it's important you know what condition you're dealing with. I want to ask you if there was something that a medical professional listening to this that you think they should know about VEDS, what it would be.
I really just think if you're a medical professional and you have treated someone with VEDS and you have to do continuing ed credits anyway, please just look into the VEDS movement. They have, really good continuing ed classes just to get to know, because if you've treated one, I mean, there's a chance that you're going to have more people coming your way, and just to be knowledgeable.
That's great. I'll link the CME down in the episode show notes for any medical professionals that are interested in doing that continuing medical education. I think it's so important, for sure. And then I also usually ask if you had advice for somebody else in the community. And I know that this is a difficult question because, you lost your daughter. So if somebody's listening to this and lost their child, or is just dealing with VEDS for the first time, or is just, grappling with all of this information, what kind of advice would you give to them?
I'd say if they are still currently, just new at dealing with the condition, whether it's them or their child, I'd say don't be afraid to stand up for yourself and, demand what you need. If you are in a situation, a lot of people kind of shy away and don't want to be, the one who has to stand their ground and say, I need this. But sometimes that's what you have to do to get what you need to take care of yourself and make sure that you're okay, or your loved ones okay. So don't be afraid to do that. I'd also say be prepared, wherever you go. I remember like when Andie was going to school for the first time and she's 6 hours away, we're trying to think of, what do we need to do to prepare? Or even when she left Albany Med and had this backup plan, I wish we would have called the hospital that was right there in Saranac Lake and just kind of gave them a heads up of what was going on, just in case. You think about this after the fact, so saying it now so that if somebody does go through a similar situation, maybe they could do things a little differently for themselves, and just maybe they have a file there that says, hey, they have this, this, and this, and they will need this type of treatment or something. Just make sure that those two hospitals communicated about this backup plan.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's such an important piece, is that preparedness piece, and and then working the medical professionals and the first responders and everybody kind of into that preparedness plan.
Yeah. And then I would also say life is about balance. So I know I see a lot of questions about, can we do this? Can we do that? And, I'd say, you don't want to do anything that's going to put you or your loved one in harm's way, but you also don't want to limit yourself so much that you're not living life as well. So it's a good balance, I think. But ultimately you make the choice, but don't forget to live life as well.
Have a little adventure.
Yes.
That's so sweet. I'd like to end this with maybe one of your favorite memories of Andie from each of you.
I think I just have a really strong connection with Andie and the Adirondacks because we started taking her up there when she was younger. And I remember we were around kayaks and, oh, I don't want to do a kayak. And she was so scared. And then by the end of this first trip, she was in it and she was paddling and she was just, loving it. And, and just seeing her as the years went on, and then, she was going up to school. She was going to be living with Ian in her own place, and she wanted our kayaks to use, and just putting them on the car for her. Like, oh my gosh, this is like coming full circle, now you're off doing your own adventures and living your life, and it was just amazing to just
For me, there's so many, but I think one of the ones that I love the most is kind of her senior year of high school. It's kind of like a compilation of things that we got to do that we knew it was specifically for her, things that she always wanted to do or that she loved. So, knowing that it was her last year there before she went away to college, like we always do like a fake Christmas tree. She always wanted a real one. So that Christmas we went and got a real tree for her, her last Christmas while she's there before college. And then we took a vacation and got to do, check off a couple of her bucket list items. She always wanted to ride in a helicopter, so we got to do that. She always wanted to ride on the beach with a horse, and we got to do that with her, and just being able to do a lot of those memories with her. I'm really grateful that we did that, in hindsight, looking back, that she got to experience all of the things that she wanted to do. So I think that's some of the memories that I look back on and love that she got to do that stuff.
That's so beautiful. She just sounds like such a beautiful soul. And I know it, like every time I see her pictures pop up on my feed, it makes me smile. I don't even know her. And I feel like y'all have done such a great job at, getting the essence of her to our community and out there. And I thank you for that. And I thank you for sharing that here on the podcast too, so people listening can hear about her and get to know her through you. So thank you so much for doing this. And I'm going to start crying. I think we're all crying.
Almost the whole way.
It's okay. Thank you really so much for doing this. And I really hope that if you're a medical professional listening to this, that you take, some of this and what she went through and, some of this advice really to heart. These is a hard condition to live with, and it's, devastating to lose someone to it. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Staying Connected, featuring Maria Vowles and Mandy Carpenter, the founders of Adventures in Love for Andie. And thank you, Maria and Mandy, for everything you are doing to support the VEDS community in Andie's honor and memory. If you want to get involved, there are still quite a few events you can participate in the next few weeks to raise awareness of VEDS, meet others, and learn more from the experts. First, spring is here, and there have been several Walks for Victory already, hosted by the Marfan Foundation around the United States and virtually. This season is not over, and there are more coming up in June. These are fundraisers, and they're also an opportunity to connect with others in the community. Join community members at these events in Seattle, Washington, New York City, New York, Boston, New England, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, Chicago, Illinois, and Ann Arbor, Michigan. I've created a Team VEDS for the PNW Walk for Victory, and I hope to meet those of you in the Pacific Northwest at this event in Seattle in June. Also right around the corner is the Foundation's Conference, held this year in Chicago, July 13th to 16th. This is an opportunity to learn from the experts and meet others in the community. In addition, the Ehlers-Danlos Society will be hosting a VEDS Camp in partnership with the VEDS Movement, division of the Marfan Foundation, the weekend prior to the Foundation Conference at Camp Joy in Ohio. This is July 7th to 9th. Links to more information about these events can be found in the episode show notes. On the next episode, the last episode of this season, we will hear from Alyssa Hanneman about her story with VEDS. And don't forget to subscribe to Staying Connected on your podcast player so you don't miss any future episodes. If you like this show, I hope you will consider sharing it with your friends on social media to help us raise awareness of VEDS together. You can also support the production of this podcast by joining my Patreon, linked in the episode show notes. Thanks so much, and I will see you soon.